the News Channel 5 network, this is MorningLine with Nick Beres.
Sounds great.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Beres coming to you on a Wednesday. You're at home right now, so you didn't have to commute into the city. I commute every morning. I have to come in and do the morning breaking news hits in our morning show with Amy and Adam. And I come in from Wilson County, and gosh, it's crazy. Just within the past 3 or 4 years, and I've been doing it for some time now, leaving at 4:30 in the morning from Mount Juliet and driving in on A40 into the city used to be a ghost town. I could literally weave down the interstate. Those days are done, okay? Even this morning now as it is, the traffic in Middle Tennessee and especially into the city has picked up, and at 4:30 in the morning, I wouldn't call it congestion, but there are a heck of a lot more vehicles out there than I remember. And this all comes to the point of, yes, we all know Nashville's growing. We all know that Nashville has a traffic problem. We also all know that a plan for, a dedicated rail system, whatever it would have been, and a transportation plan that went to the voters failed for the city, all right? Now, there were those who were against it that said, there can be other ways to do this. There were those who were for it, said if we don't pass it, it's going to be 10 or 12 years before we can do anything to address traffic again and come up with a new plan. Well, there are things that can be done in the aftermath of that vote to improve it. And we're going to talk about it this morning with a guest. We're going to go over a bunch of items and want your take and your thoughts on whether or not you think some of these will work, or if you have questions or maybe other suggestions. 737-7587 is the number. But joining us this morning is Ron Shultis. Good morning to you, Ron.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Nice to have him on. You are from the Beacon Center of Tennessee. It's a free market think tank. I was asking, what do you mean free market? And many of you may have heard Beacon was involved. Your organization was against the plan for various reasons. But Beacon's goal is?
Our goal is to empower Tennesseans to live their version of the American dream by making sure government doesn't become a burden on them. So reducing barriers to entry, taxes, regulation that prevent them from accomplishing their dreams.
Okay. And the primary concern with the plan that failed was it just cost too darn much?
Cost too much, did too little.
Did too little, okay. And the idea then was, all right, let's come up with other options. Last week you released, I guess, a traffic reduction proposal.
That's correct.
A lot of people were saying, and I appreciate this. There were some out there that just said, I don't want it because I don't want more taxes. And that's fine if that was you. Okay, maybe you don't travel into the city, but I think that's short-sighted. And to just say you don't want something because you just don't want to pay any more for it or whatever, fine. Give me an alternative, because if you don't think there's a traffic problem in Nashville, you're simply wrong. So you've come up with proposals that I guess are more affordable. We'll go through them point by point.
Sure.
But what is this report that you came out?
Yeah, what we want to do is, just like you said, Nick, there were a lot of people that were against the plan, as were we, because, as I said, it cost too much, did too little. But we didn't want to just be a group that said no. We wanted to come out with our own solutions. And what we wanted to do was focus on ideas that could be implemented quickly in the next year or two and could be done cost effectively without raising taxes. There are a lot of other ideas out there that are a lot more capital intensive and more long term. In addition to the plan that was voted down, we're starting to see other people come out with plans. All of those are ideas worth considering, but what we wanted to focus on, what are things that can be done now in the next year or so that can make a meaningful difference?
That don't come with a huge price tag.
Exactly.
There may be some, if we're going to talk about at some point dedicated lanes and things like this and but not a huge cost affiliated with it.
Correct.
Are any of them, and we'll go through them again as I said, already being addressed yet by the city in any way, or is this all new stuff?
We've talked with, some of our ideas are focused on Nashville Metro, and some of them would have to be done by the state government. And we've started having conversations with them about, they've been looking at some of the ideas that we propose, but some of these are new as well.
Have you gotten some of these ideas by looking at what's worked in other cities comparable in size to Nashville?
Absolutely. That's one of the things that we looked at. We looked at various cities such as DC, the Twin Cities, taking what's good and bad in Atlanta as a model. So we try to look for other cities that have done things better than Nashville for us to copy and duplicate.
Now, the one thing, since you're saying it's something that doesn't cost a lot, and I don't know if Beacon would ever get behind some kind of dedicated rail system, and I know you've told me before the show that light rail in your mind is just so incredibly expensive. It's not really something that you think would work. But you mentioned DC, and DC does have a lot going on. It's much bigger than us, but they have a fantastic fantastic rail system. Okay, I'm sorry, they do. Now, Portland, Oregon, similar in size to Nashville, has the light rail. Of course, they installed that years ago. I give them credit for being forward thinking, because now if they were looking to do it, they probably wouldn't, because it's too expensive. But they were ahead of the game, ahead of the curve, and they got light rail in. Now, you can debate whether it's worked as well as they had hoped, but they got it for a heck of a price compared to what you're paying now.
It is extremely expensive now. I mean, we were looking at $120 million a mile for the Nashville plant.
That's unbelievable.
It's a lot of money, for sure. And so that's the problem with light rail proposals. You know, I've lived in other cities, as we talked about, that have more dedicated rail systems, like Chicago, DC, as you mentioned. The problem is
they're all expensive.
They're all expensive, and you also have to have the density. You have to have high density destinations and departure areas to make that kind of thing work.
Now that actually makes sense to me, that high density, and you don't think Nashville's yet to, the density's becoming what it is in the city. Now, as far as where they would travel from around the periphery, or even if it would service a place, that was part of the discussion, would neighboring counties jump on this? See, I would love to have some type of dedicated transportation system, whatever it is, not susceptible to the traffic, that has the hours that work for me, and the TV business can be crazy, where I can take something in from Wilson County. I would love it. I would park my car tomorrow if it was reliable.
Right.
And my big beef with buses is they suck if they're not on dedicated things. You're going, what, Nick, I take the bus. What I mean is, you're on the bus and there's a wreck in front of you, you're stuck along with everyone else. And that's a problem for me, you know? Why am I gonna park my car for that, when at least I could then maybe drive and take a detour where a bus can't?
Absolutely. I mean, why the problem is with a bus is that you have to sit in the same traffic as everybody else. So if you've got a car, why would you give up that privacy and flexibility to sit in the same traffic? It's where you have dedicated bus routes or express bus routes that can make a big difference, and some of those are talked about in our proposal.
All right, well, we'll take some calls, but before we take our first break, which one jumps out? What should we start with in the proposal? Because there's about, what is it, 9 or 10?
There's 9 points
9 points that go down the line, but I guess the very first one, maybe we just go in order. I mean, the first one, and we'll go through them point by point and get some of your calls, but build an adaptive traffic control system, ATCS, that enables traffic signals to immediately respond to traffic demand in real time. I've heard of this. They do this in other cities. Explain what that would do.
Right. So we've all been in a scenario where you're stuck at a red light, the cars are backed up behind you, and the other way is dead open, you know, there's no cars there, and it's got the green light, and you're just sitting there frustrated, right?
Yep.
Optimizing traffic signals is one of the easiest, most cost-effective ways to reduce congestion, particularly in the downtown, more dense areas. But the problem is that they have to be updated every 3 to 5 years at least.
Because the people grow, it grows, it changes.
The city changes. I mean, look at the Gulch. Who would have thought it is what it is, you know, 5, 10 years ago?
Right.
So, and with how fast Nashville's growing, it probably needs to be done sooner than that. What some cities have started doing is building these adaptive systems, which basically means you put cameras and sensors at the major intersections across the county. And what it would do is it would send live feed back to a traffic control center. Think of it as like NASA mission control with all the TVs and monitors.
They have something like that in Atlanta, kind of, that monitors some of their traffic.
They have it in Cobb County, Los Angeles. They just did it in the Meadowlands area of New Jersey. And what it would allow is traffic engineers could change signal timings on demand to reduce bottlenecks.
So it could be a day-to-day thing, even, meaning that they could be
minute
observing
by minute.
If there was a wreck on one road that all of a sudden diverted traffic and made it different, and you had a different flow, then meaning that they would shorten a traffic light signal to accommodate if there's no cross traffic to go.
That could be done minute by minute.
Okay, now, and again, now that's not, who doesn't like that idea? But now that would involve some cost. Are there federal grants for that?
There are federal grants that you can get that are called Tiger grants. The New Jersey Meadowlands got a federal grant to help do that initial cost. But even if you were to pay the full amount, this is a very cost-effective solution compared to what was proposed earlier. The studies have been done, the average around $30,000, the highest being up to $100,000 per intersection. Even if you did $100,000 per intersection, the last time Davidson County optimized their lights, in 2016, we did 550 intersections. Okay, so let's take $100,000 plus inflation. Let's be uber conservative, right, on the high end. 550 intersections, you're talking $60 million for a vast portion of Davidson County compared to billions, as we talked about earlier.
And you're saying if you were able to do that, is there a percentage where you could estimate if you did that, how it would improve the traffic flow? Do we know? That's maybe hard to predict?
So other cities have seen some great results. Los Angeles, it was about 12 or 13%, I believe.
Okay, I see that. Yeah.
Rida, I think is how you pronounce it, in Saudi Arabia, has seen their times reduced as much as 30%. And we were talking about the buses earlier. Their system is very state-of-the-art. Imagine you're on a bus or any kind of emergency service like ambulance, police. Anytime a bus, ambulance, police, fire truck approaches a light, it automatically turns green. Okay. So imagine you're a bus and you never have to wait at a red light. Think about how much faster those types, or obviously emergency services, if they're not having to inch into an intersection, you know, cutting across the light, you can do that on these types of systems. All
right, listen, that's point one. We'll take a break. When we come back, we've got some phone calls coming in. And I think some of these others, some I've heard of before, others kind of, I say, okay, that's interesting. And there's elements in here that you wouldn't think necessarily would have had an effect on traffic, but they do in terms of incentives for businesses and how that might or might not work well. So we'll take a break. When we come back, more with Ron Shultis as we talk about what options are still on the table now in the wake of that failed traffic plan now moving forward to still improve things here in the city. We'll be right back with more and your calls right after this.